Today's topic will be electromagnetic fields and its effects on human physiology. So we have been unwrapping everything, how human body works, what can be done to improve itself, so on and so forth. A lot about nutrition, training, habits. And one of the things that we come across a lot is man-made structure influence on human body would probably fit the description. So what are electromagnetic fields? Why are they important? What do they do? Are there any ones that are actually useful for us? And so on and so forth. So David, I'll let you open up and explain.
Yeah. So simply put, electromagnetic fields exist everywhere on this planet naturally, right? The sun and the planet itself have electromagnetic fields. So you have to understand that evolutionary speaking, all living life on this planet has evolved to harness those electromagnetic fields for energy and information, literally. We'll start with a plant. A plant uses sunlight to create its energy. It's taking an electromagnetic field, aka the sunlight, and transforming it into a different substrate that could be that it extracts energy from. And if you know physics, you cannot create or destroy energy. You can only transform it. That's what a plant is doing. It's taking energy from the sun, transforming it into glucose and all the useful products that it uses for its energy. But it's the same energy, right? Energy from the sun gets transformed into energy for the plant. And that sunlight is an electromagnetic field, okay? The electromagnetic field is a spectrum that goes all the way from gamma and X-rays and cell phone Wi-Fi radiation to electromagnetic fields from electricity going through wires, all the way to the visible light that you can see, and then all the way to light that you can't see, like infrared light and UV light and all of those. Those are all part of the electromagnetic field spectrum. So the electromagnetic field spectrum is this really big, wide range of things, okay? And that then leads to the next conversation of, are there good ones? Yes, anything that is naturally occurring, your biology has already set up the structures internally at the cell level, mainly in your mitochondria, that are able to transform that energy, those electromagnetic fields, into useful things, right? So an example that you can use for that is when sunlight hits your skin, it transforms some of that energy into sulfated cholesterol, which then turns into your vitamin D. Everybody kind of understands that concept. You're literally transforming energy from the sun into another molecule in your body that is also used for energy within your body. That is a transformation of energy. You cannot create or destroy energy. In other words, if you do not get the right energy from the sun, you will not transform it into vitamin D, period. Everybody kind of understands that. And that is a very simple way to kind of grasp this. Electromagnetic fields of the natural variety do something inside your body that help it run correctly. Now, because it involves all of this array of different things, when you make an electromagnetic field, like your cell phone has a wireless communication device in there for Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. All of those are also electromagnetic fields, right? But the problem is their frequencies and densities and the way they interact with your body doesn't have anything in it that can actually harness and transform that energy into something useful. In fact, some of these mess with the current setup of your biology to make it not useful. And here is a decent, it's very rudimentary, right? The concept, but this is actually the starting point, because everybody's going to ask, okay, well, what do electromagnetic incorrect or non-native is what they call it, non-native electromagnetic fields, what do they do to the body, right? And the thing that is the easiest to explain is calcium channels at the cell membrane are what dictate the flow in and out of cell membranes of certain molecules and certain things. And under natural circumstances, sunlight and the Earth's electromagnetic field work together to give you the correct amount of calcium channel fluxing, which then means that the right amount of calcium goes into the cell, which means that when you have UVA light and other spectrums of light, the correct amount of nitric oxide gets made, which then turns into the right amount of free radical signaling. We talked a little bit about this in autophagy and apoptosis, where the correct amount of free radicals is actually very crucial. You don't want zero, that's bad, and you don't want an enormous amount, that's also bad. The correct amount is what's needed, and that starts with the right electromagnetic field, mainly being from the sun and the earth. Okay, if you have a 5G EMF or 4G or 3G or Wi-Fi, you can substitute whatever you want in here, right? Everybody's on the 5G bandwagon and whatnot, you know, as far as like conspiracy theories, but you can literally label this whatever you want. It could be Wi-Fi EMF. It could be cell phone EMF. That's going to increase the amount of calcium channel signaling into the cell, which then starts to deplete other nutrients. One of the main ones is going to be B12. And that's going to increase different free radical signaling and start to destroy photoreceptors like melanopsin, rhodopsin, encephalopsin, and those then start to mess up apoptosis and autophagy. So by changing the electromagnetic field that interacts with your cells, you mess up a whole lot of basic functions of the cell, which everybody's talking about, right? Like everybody in the longevity space and everything's like, oh, if you fast, you can, accelerate autophagy or apoptosis. And they don't fundamentally understand that the correct amount of autophagy and apoptosis is the right answer. And the thing that dictates the correct amount is the electromagnetic field that's actually interacting at the calcium channel signaling part of the cell to make the correct amount of calcium channel signaling into the cell, which then dictates all of the internal working mechanisms inside of here. Think of it like an engine, literally. If I put the wrong fuel in a gas tank, that engine's not going to run very well. Or if I put subpar fuel, a good example is a Ferrari or a Lamborghini. You're not going to put 82 octane gasoline in a high-end engine. You're going to put really high quality octane in it because it's set up to run specifically with that high octane fuel. Your body's the same way because that's how it's evolved over evolutionary timeframes. It's only been in the last 100 years that we have electromagnetic fields that we make. So you have to understand that from a biological perspective, it's been 3 generations only that we have been inducing electromagnetic fields that our body's not capable of interpreting correctly is the right way. So from 100 years back, how much history is there for humans? I don't know, probably 70,000 years, right? 70,000 years of evolutionary timeframes where our body has been fine-tuned to correctly interpret electromagnetic field signaling from the earth and the sun, because that's mainly the main electromagnetic fields that we've evolved with. And that coincidentally helps us harness that energy, right? Like everybody talks about solar energy and how so much solar energy hits the sun that it can power the whole planet for a year if we could harness it. Well, guess what? Biology has figured out to harness electromagnetic fields from the sun, all of the energy from the sun, and the energy from the planet, the electromagnetic field of the planet. It's already set that up. There are studies out there, not even joking, where they've taken melanin, right? We've talked a lot about melanin and how that's one of the main things that actually lets you collect electromagnetic fields, mainly from the sunlight. But they've even shown that if you have enough melanin on your body and enough skin exposed, you can actually create more than 90% of the ATP that you need for the whole day with about 2 hours of full naked exposure. Okay, so they've done studies on this where enough ATP is made in the human body with full naked exposure to sunlight to create enough energy that it supplies 90% of your energy for that day. In other words, you can get away with eating very, very little as long as you drink water if you are outside in the sun for a very long, and it's not even that long of a time, 2 hours if you're totally naked. That's skin square, the surface area, right? The more surface area exposed, the more you can collect, etc. If you have less skin exposed, then obviously it's going to take longer than 2 hours to collect that amount of energy. But they've literally shown, there are studies out there showing that if you have enough melanin on your skin, you can create that much energy from the sun alone. That is an adaptation from evolutionary timeframes. When you introduce an electromagnetic field that your body doesn't understand, it messes with the things that it's integrated into that system.
Well,
Like
talk deeper about what are these things that are getting messed up. So can it lead to some kind of illnesses apart from
correct.
like lethargy, many other things? So what would be the biggest things that we see from being exposed to too much or too strong electromagnetic fields?
Right. So we can talk about the calcium channels, we can talk about vitamin depletion, we can talk about all kinds of things, but I think it's better for the laying audience to kind of, let's talk about the symptoms that you might experience. And then we'll talk about, because this is not a thing that you have to have something like there's equipment out there that's not that expensive that you can test your home. And there are services out there where you can hire people to come test your home for this, right? So I want to make that clear. It's if you have symptoms, don't guess and start doing taking a bunch of weird supplements and doing a bunch of weird things. Test, because you can just test it, right? We've talked about this with blood work. Instead of guessing and just taking a bunch of supplements, maybe you should get some blood work done to see what you actually need and what you don't need, right? Electromagnetic fields and figuring out if you have electromagnetic field sensitivity or problems with your body because of electromagnetic fields, you can test this stuff. You can get this stuff tested, right? So at the long and the short of it is there are intracellular things that happen. The main one is calcium channel signaling. And if you want to know anything about calcium channel signaling, that actually dictates products coming into the cell. And you can quickly deplete some things. Think of it like a warehouse, right? If all of a sudden the warehouse doesn't understand when to take in product and when to not take in product, you quickly end up with deficits and surpluses of things that you normally wouldn't. That's the easiest way to frame it, right? So now let's talk about symptoms and things of that nature that you could experience, right? If you have a lot of electromagnetic field sensitivity, you can get things like tinnitus, right? So just ear ringing and buzzing for no reason. And it tends to kind of come and go, and people don't really pay attention to it other than it kind of comes and goes. But if you pay attention to where you're at when it's present versus when it's not, you will start to decipher, hey, it's probably related to my Wi-Fi router sitting next to my head all the time at work or whatever, right? Or things of that nature. So tinnitus is one of them. Another thing that can happen is anxiety. You can literally, because of the calcium channel effect, that's a stress response. So it can raise cortisol, right? Unnecessarily. So you could literally be working and it's a normal day, nothing's really happened, and just be anxious, like really anxious, like something bad is happening, but clearly nothing is happening, right? And so then you go to a psychologist and they tell you it's all in your head. Well, it could literally be a stress response at the cellular level, raising cortisol unnecessarily at the wrong point in time during your day. That is a real thing, especially if it happens consistently, right? And that's the problem. When things like this happen consistently, people automatically assume, like anxiety, for example, immediately they go to a therapist and start working through anxiety protocols. And, sometimes it helps, sometimes it doesn't. But at the end of the day, when people find that it helps, it's usually because they've removed themselves from the actual environment that's causing the anxiety, right? And that's what I tell people. That's actually a low-hanging fruit. Hey, if you're experiencing some of these things, immediately take a note of where, you can write down, I'm in my office, or I'm in my office at home, or in my office at work, or at the gym, right? Like I know people that literally start experiencing anxiety and dizziness and stuff like that at the gym, right? And so then I go, okay, what were you wearing at the gym? What was going on at the gym? And next thing you know, they have Bluetooth, they have their Bluetooth headset on, and they have their iPod rolling, and they're at a gym with lots of TVs and Wi-Fi around and all of that. And I go, okay, when you leave the gym, does that go away? And they go, yes, it does. So what the hell's going on? I'm like, it's probably an electromagnetic field interference. I'm like, next time you go to the gym, don't put your headphones on. Let's see if that makes a difference. Next thing you know, they're like, that actually kind of helped. Not a lot, not completely, but it helped. And then I go, okay, let's go to a different gym. Just get a date at a different gym. They go to a different gym, no issues, right? So it can literally be that specific. It can literally be the building that you're in is causing a problem because almost everybody is going the easy solution for introducing technology to people, which is wireless, right? Everybody's going wireless with everything. That's just a lazy way to get technology to people. And I know this because I have 10 years experience in wireless communication and automation and instrumentation in the oil and gas industry. Rule number one, when you automate anything or bring technology to something, is hardwire everything, because if you do not hardwire it, you run the risk of interfering with other things, including biology, and you also run the risk of faulty signaling, right? So one wireless device signaling incorrectly to another wireless device, that is a big hazard, especially when you're working with high pressures and high temperatures and stuff like that. And if you think about it, that's no different than you. You are a high quality information interpretation machine. You have a supercomputer in your head. The problem is there's no metal shielding around your head that keeps you safe from wireless communication. So it can have an interference effect. Other things that can happen, especially if it's really strong electromagnetic fields, you can start getting tendon and ligament issues like burning of the joints, burning of the tendons and ligaments, feeling really weak, almost fragile and brittle in your tendons and ligaments. And that actually is explained very easily by visualizing what happens to a steak when you put it in a microwave, right? The tendons and the ligaments and the fat around it starts to bubble and shrivel up and brittle. It becomes more brittle. So that can happen to a living tissue as well, including your own, if the electromagnetic field is really strong. Other things that can happen is things like transgenerational epigenetics can change. So in other words, if you have a lot of electromagnetic field signaling, you can have a child that's born with autism and things of that nature. I'm not saying that this causes all autism. I'm saying it can accelerate the rate at what autism can happen in a population. Um, things like genetic skin transmutations like albinoism, right? An albino can make melanin. That actually is an adaptation to a poor solar environment plus electromagnetic fields. So if you have a poor solar environment, so you just don't go outside very much at all, the next generation gets that information, right? So they're going, hypothetically in the womb, hey, the environment that we're going to be born into has very little sunlight. So we should be born with a lot less melanin on our exteriors so that we can easily collect more sunlight when we do come into the environment. That's how you can get a lot more onset of albinoism, or another format of albinoism, which is I think it's called Lucian, which basically means that the skin is white, but their pupils still have melanin and their nervous system still has melanin, but albinos don't. That's why they have pink eyes, because there's no melanin in their even in their eye tract. And so that is one of those. That's the simplest way to kind of tell people. There's all kinds of things like that. Another big one, right? Especially depending on the electromagnetic field, there's three of them. We'll talk about them. If there's a lot of electromagnetic field, you could get gut disruption. You could literally have like constant diarrhea or leaky gut and things of that nature, because the way that the gut operates is supposed to be permeable. And the thing that tells it to open and close is your electromagnetic fields getting put off by the bacteria in your gut, right? We talked about this in our
What are the
gut
examples
microbiome.
of electromagnetic fields? So what would be the things for people to kind of take care of?
Yeah. So
Might be
big
because of this.
Yeah. So a big magnetic field, like just right off the bat, is if you live close to a power station, right, with lots of big transformers that step up electricity or step down in electricity, those will create a huge magnetic field. And those can go for several blocks, several city blocks. And so that's pure electromagnetism. And that if you live close to one of those, you can, and especially if you're sensitive to it, you can end up with a disruption of your gut. Signaling. Another thing is, and again, they have to be pretty strong to get the gut effect. They have to be pretty strong to get the tendon ligament effect. Another thing, personally, that I had was a cell phone tower that was built within 100 meters of my house. The electromagnetic field was about 30 times higher than it should be for safe living. And there are studies on this, right? There are studies on this, not in the US. The US doesn't do studies on this because the FCC is kind of bought so that they don't
Or they
monitor
don't
this
share
shit.
the studies.
You're correct, but there are studies out of Canada that clearly show, hey, they not only do the studies show that the electromagnetic fields do this, but they actually have come down with actual numbers of, hey, if you are measuring a radio frequency electromagnetic field, it should be below 100 microwatts per meter squared for safe living, right? They actually have measurements that they've put out that make it that you can go by and use them to see if you have too much or too little. And anyway, a large cell phone tower close to where you live, or radar, right? Radar from airports, things of that nature. Those are the big ones. Those are the big ones. And the reason why I'm talking about those is because those you can't do anything about, right? Those are things that are external to your home. And if they're too close to you, honestly, the real solution is to move away. It's not, don't waste hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to mitigate your home if you happen to have one of these things external to your home, because the magnetic fields are they're way too strong. They're way too strong for you to mitigate them with, because people will tell you, oh, you put special film on your windows, you put a canopy in your home, and you make a Faraday cage. None of that stuff is going to be enough to mitigate something like that. That's why I'm putting those up front first. If you have things like that close to your home and you get your home tested and it's come and you find that it is coming, in fact, from this external source, the only solution is to move. That's just what it is. Now, let's talk about smaller electromagnetic fields that you can mitigate, right? Let's say you don't have any of these bigger electromagnetic fields close to you, but you do get sleep disruption, right? So that's another thing that can happen. That's another anecdotal thing. Sleep disruption, meaning you struggle to stay asleep all night long, especially if there's a lot of urination involved, right? If you are getting up regularly to urinate, and regularly, I mean more than once, right? Like one time a night, not too concerned. That can be normal depending on how long you sleep before you get up. But if you're regularly waking up 2 or 3 times every single evening to go to the bathroom, that tells me that there's a problem with vasopressin. Vasopressin is an electromagnetic field induced hormone. And the way that you can think about it is like this: vasopressin should be elevated when you sleep, and the electromagnetic fields are low because the sun has gone away. That tells the body to raise vasopressin to keep you asleep so that you don't have to urinate and stuff like that. And then when the sun comes back up, electromagnetic field comes back up, vasopressin gets suppressed, and now you go and urinate. And that's very easy to understand. Every time you wake up in the morning, what's your first urge? It's to go urinate and defecate and things of that nature. It kind of kicks off the system. That's the vasopressin is also known as the antidiuretic hormone. And so that key thing right there is not to be overlooked. Again, it's very mild if it's something that's induced in your own home, like your Wi-Fi router, just being on all the time, or the wiring in your house is right next to your head and you don't know it, right? Like that's the thing. You don't have X-ray vision inside your walls to see where the wires are running your walls, right? So maybe you move your bed or whatever, and next thing you know, you have a sleep issue, and obviously nobody's going to tell you, oh, well, you should look into your wall and see what's going on there. But there are electromagnetic fields coming from your wiring under normal circumstances. There are things you can do about this, and electrical code knows this, right? So electricians that follow electrical code, they know this. The problem is the code doesn't require them to use the right shielding for their wires in residential homes, but it does in commercial buildings. Okay. So if you, and again, I worked in this industry, so I know, right? If you go to a commercial building, the regulations for a commercial building are different than a residential building. The wiring inside a commercial building needs to be inside metal conduit or metal shielding. Why? So that it captures the electromagnetic field so that there's no interference with other parts of the system. That's via the wiring code. But coincidentally, when you do put a wire inside a metal conduit or a metal shielding, it also can't interfere with you, right? But in a residential home, you're not, the electrician is not required to do any metal shielding or run any wire inside any metal conduit. What does that mean? Now electromagnetic fields can interact freely with anything in there, but the code doesn't require them to use it, right? So most residential homes are wired not incorrectly, they're just not protected against the electromagnetic fields correctly. Hopefully that makes sense. So if, and again, those fields are small. Like if, for example, if I had a wire in this wall right here, the electromagnetic field from that wire will only protrude out about 3 or 4 feet, right? So if I stood in the middle of the room, I'm not getting interfered by that. But like I said, if your bed happens to be located next to a wire that you don't know about, it could be literally inducing an electromagnetic field right in your head, and that can disrupt vasopressin and sleep patterns. Right. Another key thing is if you happen to track your sleep, and all of a sudden you get really poor REM sleep, like really poor, like 10 minutes of REM sleep or less, then that would be one of the first things that I would start to look into. There could be other things, right? Like just not enough melatonin release from too much blue light at night and things of that nature. But this is one of the things that I would discuss, right? And at the very least, some of the stuff that we talked about before, don't sleep with your cell phone next to your head. Don't sleep with the Wi-Fi on at night. Those are really low hanging fruit to mitigate small electromagnetic fields inside your home. But if you still experience some of those problems, then that's when I would say, okay, let's spend a little bit of money and get your house tested, because you can test and not guess, right? Like that's the main thing. Just like blood work, yeah, you can take a few supplements here and there that are kind of no-brainers, low-hanging fruit. But if you're still having issues, the first thing is you got to get some blood work. You gotta know what's going on, right? And this is no different. It's just external to your body.
So what kind of tests you could do apart from buying or renting somebody who knows how to deal with this equipment? Is there anything in your blood that can show you being exposed to high electromagnetic fields frequently or too drastically, so to speak?
Not directly, but there are telltale signs that there could be something like this, but it's not a blood test that's regularly done. It's called a blood smear, and basically what they do is they take your blood and they wipe it on a petri dish, and then they look at it under a microscope. And if all of your blood cells are nice and round and uniform, it's very likely that you do not have electromagnetic field interference. But if they're broken up and look like stars and they're broken and stuff like that, that actually can tell you that you're having a hypoxia event, and electromagnetic fields will cause a pseudo hypoxia event because it's being forced to have way more calcium channel signaling in there, which will dictate other molecules like oxygen tensions. And so then your red blood cells get deformed, things like that. So there isn't a direct test in blood work.
Nothing
That is a very
we can just order it online.
No, there really isn't. That's the problem. And that's why it's easy to hide this shit, right? Like people are going to go, well, show me the studies, right? Show me the studies that, and you're not going to be able to find blood markers that test this stuff. You're not going to be able to find those things, but you can find studies. One of them called the NTP study that literally looks exactly at cell phone radiation in the context of, does it cause cancer or not? And they have found that it raises the risk, right? And then you get into that, and then they talk about calcium channel signaling and everything like that. So if there was a way to monitor calcium channel signaling, that would be the direct test. The problem is nobody wants to spend the money to do that. Why? Because when you do spend the money to do that and you find, holy crap, we actually can see when electromagnetic fields interfere incorrectly, and you make that readily available for everybody, people would shit themselves because it would be a lot of people going, holy crap, I'm being interfered by electric. Very, very quickly, you would change the industry of technology delivery, right? Wireless technology would go just like this. I'm not joking. The moment people could test their calcium channel signaling, they would stop buying wireless communication devices, your Wi-Fi routers and wireless TVs and all of that type of stuff. They would go down. Everybody would start going to wired, because this stuff exists, right? Like I've worked in an industry where we need a lot of technology. We need a lot of automation. If you hardwire it, you can get all of that and almost zero negative effects towards biology. And people would quickly realize it would change your spending behavior, is essentially what would happen. And in the US, that's a bad thing, right? They're trying to expand the 5G network. They're trying to deliver faster wireless services. You would basically squash that whole industry if you could test this directly.
So what about any practical things that people can do to minimize exposure to electromagnetic fields? So you mentioned already, get it all tested and whatnot. Can somebody, let's say, check if their sleep is messed up and then go spend day in nature and then come back?
Yes, that's actually,
maybe
I'm glad that you said that.
This is the simple test that I've done, that maybe I need to reach out to professionals now.
Correct. Yes. So before you go spend money on getting it tested or figuring out how to test it yourself or things of that nature, yes. Are there things that you can do? Yes, absolutely. One of the things is you can book yourself a little getaway, a little camping getaway. And there's actually a study on this that literally shows one weekend, so 3 days, right? A Friday evening all the way till a Monday morning of just being out in nature with no cell phone, right? With no cell phone, no wireless.
Yeah, make sure you don't demand them to have Wi-Fi router there.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like you have to get rid of the things that you're trying to test, right? So you go and just do a real camping trip, right? There's firelight. You go to sleep when you get tired. You wake up when the sun wakes you up, and you just go about your day, right? Normal camping with no technology with you. In 3 days, they have shown with blood tests confirmed that melatonin regulation goes back to normal, and all of the downstreams from recovery and sleep go back to normal. And you would feel that amount of change, and it happens fast. Like I said, 3 days. So give yourself 3 or 4 days or a week of being away from electromagnetic and no wireless technology and no fake lighting. You can use firelight, you can use all that stuff, and that would be enough to tell you right away your sleep would improve. After 3 or 4 days, you should feel way more energized, and you would actually, for example, if you have gut problems, you would probably actually start like the fourth morning wake up and you don't really have gut problems. If you have sleep problems or like that waking up situation, that would go away, things of that nature. And immediately that should tell you, okay, I need to look into what's going on in the place that I sleep in my house, right? And that's when that would be the red flag of you probably should spend a little bit of money not getting blood work and not spending money on supplements, but spend some money on your house test, because there's a reason why you slept better where there is no electromagnetic field interference versus when you go back to your normal life.
Yeah, that sounds a great piece of advice that I think gets more and more popular now, especially now with all the cold plunge retreats and all those kind of things. A lot of people kind of feel much better when they come back from those things, and it doesn't necessarily take.
Yeah, and you know, a lot of those things, the main thing, right, especially if there's designed correctly, is that they're away from a lot of technology. They're off kind of on their own, those places that they're the retreats. And if they are like that and you do sleep better and you do get benefit, don't go, oh, it was the cold plunge, and then go buy yourself a cold plunge and then you don't get the same result at your own house. Think outside the box. It's the actual environment that you changed, right? You went to this retreat And that's what changed the outcome, not the procedures that they're doing there. Sometimes, but very rarely, it's the procedure. Most likely, it's the environment. The environment changed, and that environment has a lot of things that you can't see, which are these electromagnetic fields. And it's, again, it's not that technology is bad. It's just that the delivery method of technology can be negatively impacting you. You can change how it gets delivered, right? You can hardwire your house, and now you don't need Wi-Fi, and now you can, put your phone on airplane mode and not need it. Or, God forbid that you actually have a phone line, right? Like a phone line where people call you instead of anything else, right? And there's no interference there. Like there
I
is zero
remember last
interference.
time
Like
when I
people have to understand.
saw an actual land phone line.
Yeah. And so anyway, so you have to understand that. And then there's internet calling, right? Like most people use internet for calling now. Well, if you have an internet calling thing and you've wired your internet into your house, it's almost the same as a hard line, right? You just have to think outside the box and think about how is it actually interfering with you? And it's the wireless part that really messes with you.
So yeah, you broke down.
And then just one more thing that I wanted to bring up, just for people that are interested in getting their home tested. In the US, I would recommend these people right here, EMF Safe. Not only do they come out and test your home, you can consult with them. They can actually, if you happen to want to get the devices to test your own home, you can literally ring them up for 30, 40 bucks for a consultation, and they will literally tell you what you need to buy and how you need to test your home if you want to test it yourself and spend very little money. If you want to be hands off and you don't care about the money, they can come out and test it. And not only that, they can actually give you mitigation protocols. They are not going to be the people that tell you to shield your home and do grounding and Faraday. These are the people that are actually going to come in and find, hey, it's your electrical circuit in this part of the home. And so they'll actually set up airplane mode for your home while you sleep, in accordance to what they test and what they find. They'll even go, they start on the outside of your home and make sure and test to make sure it isn't an external thing, right? So they can tell you, hey, there's a cell phone tower that's like half a mile away that is interfering. This is how much it's interfering, and that sort of stuff. They can tell you the ins and the outs and do all the legwork for you if you need that type of service. So that's emfsafe.com. I am associated with them because I use them for my clients, just because I can't make it to test out clients individually and stuff like that. So I use them for that, but they also happen to provide the products that can actually help mitigate this stuff.
Awesome. Well, thank you, David, for your time, and I'll catch you in the next video.
Awesome.